Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the Township of Union, which is being held pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Law, C-231, Laws of New Jersey, dated 1975. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the local source and/or the Star Ledger, the two newspapers of record, and notice has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building adjacent to the municipal clerk's office. Roll call, Mr. Manguso.
Mr. Wiley. Here. Ms. Martins.
Here.
Mr. Bentavegana.
Here.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. McNeil is absent. Mr. Graves.
Present.
Mr. Ricketts is absent. Mr. Champion.
Here. There being a quorum present, this meeting is now declared open. Mr. Manguso, at this time, are there any communications?
No, there's no communications, Mr. Chairman.
Proceeding with tonight's meeting, we have one case this evening. It's calendar number 3429, the New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, which is AT&T. Location is 2322 Morris Avenue, block 3915, lot 17.01, and it's for the temporary telecommunications facility. Counselor, would you like to begin and introduce yourself?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Erin Borick. I'm an attorney with Phillips Lytle in Buffalo, New York. I represent the applicant, New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, or AT&T. Tonight, we have before you an application for variances from setback and separation distances required by the Land Development Ordinance, and for minor site plan approval for the installation and operation of a temporary wireless telecommunications facility at 2322 Morris Ave in Union, New Jersey. Just by way of quick background, the proposed temporary facility is designed to replace an existing AT&T wireless telecommunications facility that's currently located on the rooftop of a building located at 2401 Morris Avenue, but that building is scheduled for demolition at the end of this month. The first variance request is because the proposed temporary facility's monopole base is approximately 52 feet from the northwest side lot, and Ordinance Section 170-2304A18 would typically require 90 feet or 100% of the height of the tower. The second and third variance requests are due to the fact that the proposed temporary facility's monopole base is closer to two residential zones, and that would be less than the minimum 750-foot separation distance to residential zones that is typically required by Ordinance Section 170-2304A19. Otherwise, this proposed facility complies with the ordinance's applicable setback, height, and other regulations, which is more fully set forth in the cover letter and the compliance analysis provided in my correspondence. So I do have two witnesses this evening, both of whom have been retained by AT&T to assist with the development of this project. The first is Martin McGee. He is a site acquisition specialist with Aerosmith. He'll testify to matters related to site background and the facility's physical dimensions, lease status, land order consents, and the timing for construction. The second is Daniel Pinesso, a radio frequency engineer with Frequence. He is our expert witness, and he will describe AT&T's network needs and the RF justification for this proposed temporary facility as a critical need for the area that it serves. So I would at this time like to mark the exhibits that I submitted.
Yes, I marked Council A1, the application as it was submitted. I marked A2, the site plan, which is comprised of 15 sheets, so collectively that'll be A2. And I marked A3, the submission that your office sent, which included the particulars about the site. I know there was different exhibits attached to that, so we'll refer to that collectively as A3 for the record, and from there we can mark accordingly if there's additional exhibits.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to call Mr. McGee as the first witness.
I will swear in the witness. If you can raise your right hand and swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide this evening is the truth and the whole truth.
Yes,
For the record, state and spell your name with your business affiliation.
certainly. Thank you. My name is Martin McGee, Marty McGee. I work for Aerosmith Development. The address is 318 West Avenue, Saratoga Springs, New York, 12866.
Just spell it was McGee, M-C-G.
MCGEE, you got it.
And Martin was the first name?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just note for the record, too, the Collier's report has been circulated. It's dated February 6th, 2024. There is a reference in there for the board's benefit. I know you got it as part of your packets. It references a D variance. A D variance is not required here. It is a C1 zone, so just so everybody is, and to the extent there's any public here that may have reviewed the Collier's information, the information that they referred to originally at the start of the report was dated. It is a CI zone of which the use is permitted. So it's a big difference in terms of what the applicant is here to do tonight. They still need bulk variances only, but not AD use variance. So I just wanted to clarify that. A couple other particulars for the Collier's report. We don't mark that into the record, but I referred to it, and we can amend accordingly as we go between your witnesses that you have tonight.
Thank you. All right, Mr. McGee, can you please describe the nature of the services you supply to AT&T?
Before we begin, Counselor, could you just tell us a little about your credentials?
Well, first, I'm not here as an expert witness, rather as providing testimony. But yes, I've been performing site acquisition services for the last 22 years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGee.
Certainly.
So, Mr. McGee, with that, can you just describe generally what you do for AT&T?
Certainly, yes. Generally speaking, I would get a search area for which I would need to fill a coverage need. You think of it as a circle on a map, if you will, a search ring, and I would need to find something that works, that provides the coverage that AT&T is lacking at that time. Typically, it'd have to be in the search ring. The closer to the center, the better. And it would need to be a certain height in order to achieve the coverage objective.
And what about specific to the proposed site that we're here for today?
Well, generally what I'll do is I'll find a site, one that works, and I'll take it through the leasing portion of it and the zoning portion of it. And I could speak towards this one directly if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I found this site. I looked at several different sites, starting north on Morris Avenue and heading south on the east side of Morris Avenue. 2444 Morris Avenue. It's about a 3-story building. Generally, it helps for us to have something on a rooftop. It's a lot easier to build, especially if there's antennas already on it. It just makes it an easier process. So we looked at 2444. We actually had a design visit with myself, several engineers. Subsequently, we found that it would not work for us, and Dan Panesso can speak towards the exact reasons why. Generally, it would not achieve the objective that we have, which is to cover Morris Avenue, and more importantly, cover the high school. It's very important to AT&T to have coverage of the high school. We've had it for about 21 years. We want to maintain that. After 2444, heading south down, we went to 2424, same thing, same problem. Didn't get to the high school. From there, we went to 2414. We looked at that. Same thing, would not reach the high school. 2400, again, same problem, would not reach it. Also, with some of these rooftops, there was already carriers on them, so we didn't have the room on the rooftop to get our azimuths, our directional antennas, because they would have been blocked by the carrier that's already there. Finally, we looked at 2386 Morris Avenue. It was just too low, and it runs into the same problem as you can't get across the street into the high school below. Those are the properties that we looked at, and 2322, what made that an attractive place for us to put our antennas, one, we had a willing landlord. Two, it was zoned, commercial industrial, which is what we're looking for. We had a willing landlord, we had a great amount of space, so we had the room. The room, obviously, you have to have the space for it. More than ample room, it's a very sizable lot, and that's mainly the reason that we chose that parcel, that property. It helps us achieve our objective.
Could you describe who owns the site?
Yes, Brian Yeager of Yeager Lumber. I'm sure he's been around here
Yes.
for many, many years. He's the owner, and he's been a pleasure to deal with. And
How is it being used right now?
strictly a lumber yard. They have I'm sure you're all familiar, they have I guess you would call it the retail part in the front. Mm-hmm. And then behind that, you have the lumber yard itself. You have a gate, locked gate, which heads back to the lumber yard. And then you would have our proposed site, I would say about a football's length from the street, from Morris Avenue, back to where the proposed location is. And if you went from Morris Avenue, it would be straight back to the right, about halfway back. We couldn't go any further back. The further back you'd go, the taller you'd have to be to reach the high school. So this is a midpoint. Plus, if we went further back, it gets wet back there, so that would be another issue that we try to avoid.
Is this site surrounded by other commercial uses?
It is, yes. It's surrounded by a commercial property to the north, commercial properties to the south, one of them which Brian Yeager actually owns. But there's a line of commercial properties right along there. So on both sides, you have commercial properties.
And then, can you just describe generally how this pole will look?
Sure. Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah, no problem. It's going to be a very bland monopole. It's a temp ballast mount pole. As far as the pole itself, if you think of it as a plate, which is welded to a piece of steel with an open flange, that plate is anchored down by concrete blocks, holding it in place. And then the assembly of the pole is actually, you'd bring in a truck, and it would just pop on the other pieces to get to the height that we're looking at, which is 90 feet with an 85-foot rad, which is our antennas will be at 85 feet, which will allow us, of course, to service Morris Avenue, but more importantly, to reach the high school.
Now, is there any equipment associated with the proposed temp facility that has the potential to create noise?
No. There would be if we had a generator, but we don't have a generator. We're getting our power through PSE&G. We've already coordinated that. So there would be no generator. That would be where the noise would come from. There'll be no refueling of a generator because there will be no generator. If you had to compare the noise, I guess you could compare it to maybe a noise that you would maybe hear if you were underneath a transmission tower or something like that, a very low buzz. Really, you'd have to actually try and hear it to hear it.
Now, in terms of timing, this is an urgent project.
It is, yes. I'm sorry.
Well, what is the length of time to construct this proposed site?
The length of time, it's a very simple process because it's not impervious. We're not going into the ground. Like I said, it's just a plate with a piece of steel and you'd pop in the other pieces. So you're looking at about a week, maybe 2 weeks at the tops. First week, just bringing in the gravel, smoothing out the surface. Then you'll bring in the actual piece of steel. We have to deliver it by crane, so that portion of it usually takes about 1 to 2 days, 3 days at the most. We don't like to rent the crane for any longer than we have to. It's very expensive. So you're looking at 1 or 2 days plus another week for the gravel. Probably about a week, 2 weeks tops.
And then after construction, how often will the proposed facility be visited for either maintenance, repairs, regular operations?
Absolutely. You could count on somebody showing up once it's built, probably once a month for maybe 15, 20 minutes just to take a look, make sure everything's operating correctly. Also, these are unmanned facilities which are remotely monitored. So they're monitored from a network operations control center somewhere else, and they could tell you if any alarms are going off or anything like that. But really, you won't have anybody there other than maybe once a month for 15, 20 minutes. And that'll be a cell tech from AT&T.
All right, and then finally, you reviewed the engineering report, the Collier's report, right?
I did.
Okay, do you have any, and we already talked about the zoning mistake, but do you have any other comments to that report?
Well, I know that one of our engineers from Aerosmith Development spoke with Mr. Hoover from Collier's Design Group today, just to get a better feel for what his comments meant about the protection of the site, things of that nature. And it was basically about the security of it and whether it would be a problem for, I don't know, for others to, cause problems. Just to let you know, we have an 8-foot fence surrounding the cell site. As far as theft or anything like that, I think that was the intent of the comments. There's really nothing to steal. There's no copper, which would really be the only thing of value. We don't really have any instances of anybody taking our equipment. Plus, we have the 8-foot fence. In addition to that, we have the actual lumberyard fence, which is locked after hours. We'll have a key in the event of emergency in case we need access. Hopefully, that'll be something we'll never have to use. Typically, anybody that would go out there would be a Monday through Friday, between 8 and 5 kind of event. Once
Right.
it's built, it's very simple, it runs itself.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Those are all the questions I have for my witness.
At this time, are there any board members that would like to question the testimony that Mr. McGee has given?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just one question.
Sure.
You mentioned there are alarms on the tower. Are they
These are,
alarms that are going to go off there or back in the remote?
it's a good
center?
question, I appreciate it. These are alarms that you would not hear at the site. These
Okay.
are alarms that would be, I guess you could call it silent in that sense, but they're remote alarms, which would be sent to a network operations control center, and they would get it on their computer, and they would have to send out a cell tech to deal with it.
Thank
But
you.
no loud noises from
Nothing
the
that's
actual
heard by
site
the-
itself. It's a good question, but no,
Thank you.
sir.
Mr. McGee, you noted that the monopole is approximately 90 feet high. What is the approximate diameter of it?
I would say it's about 3 feet in diameter.
3 feet in diameter?
But,
Okay.
I'd have to check the plans to get
Well,
the
no,
specific,
it-
but yes, approximately.
Ballpark is about 3
Yes.
feet.
It tapers up too. It gets thinner as you get to
Right.
the top. Yeah.
Are there
So
any
3
other?
feet at the base and certainly a lot thinner at the top.
Yeah, probably about a foot and a half or 2
That's,
feet.
yes, 18 inches, yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other board members that would like to question Mr. McGee's testimony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McGee, you mentioned that PS will be supplying the power.
PSE&G, yes, we've already
Okay.
coordinated with them.
And is it going to be coming off a pole?
It is, yeah.
Is this underground or the wires
It
will
is,
be?
yes, actually it is.
Okay.
And the reason it's underground, it's intentional, because it's a lumber yard. So you have people lifting materials, forklifts, whatnot. So we prefer it to be underground. PSC&G would prefer it to be underground. Most importantly, the landlord would prefer it to be underground. That's why it's underground.
Thank you.
We don't want anybody clipping any, wires, which obviously would be a concern.
Any other board members? Hearing none. Are there any members of the public that would like to come forward and question the testimony that Mr. McGee has provided? Would you come up here and state your name and your address? And it's just the question of his testimony, not a comment. Thank you.
Pietro Lomuscio, 1040 Gifford Court. From where the fence is, from the lumberyard, how far in you going?
Okay, so where the proposed tower is in relation to the lumberyard, is
Yeah.
that what you're asking? You familiar with the property, sir?
Yeah, I live
Okay.
right there.
Okay,
That's
absolutely.
where the trestle used to be, the train, right? The train, the trestle. Right, that's a state property between the lumberyard and my house. That's where the train used to go by. Right. I'm the first house right there on the corner.
Where the train tracks are, it's the opposite side of the
Okay,
property.
I'm right across. I'm right across. I mean, I can see the lumberyard from my house.
Right.
They come in there and do some work all the time. Back and forth, make a noise, digging with a big crane. So I don't know where your thing is going to be. It's not going to be no noise, no alarm?
There'll be no digging. First off, there will be no digging, other than the trenching for the PSE&G power lines. There would be no digging at all. It lays on top of the surface. It's weighted down by concrete blocks, so there would be no digging.
So this is going to be 3 feet wide and not high? The tower?
3 feet wide at the base, and then it tapers up, and at the top, it would be about 18 inches in diameter.
There's going to be no issue with the people that live around there? That you building this thing there?
I'm not sure I can answer that question.
Now,
It's a
one
fair
person
question
at a
if
time.
that's-
You
if
can't
that's the
let
question.
people speak from the audience.
You'll have your chance, ma'am.
I'm sorry, if you could just ask the question again. I apologize.
I'm saying, with the future, are you building this tower there? What the consequences to the people that live around that area?
Consequences in terms
As
of,
far as noise or alarm, or
As-
people coming to work?
yes, I can speak towards both those items. As far as noise, you will not hear it. You'd have to be right on top of it to hear it, and you'd have to listen closely.
Well,
It
I'm
doesn't-
about 20 feet away.
I don't think you'd hear it 20 feet away, honestly.
From where the lumber yard is, from that wall, my house is right here.
Excuse me, sir? If your house, and I'm looking at the map,
Right.
your house is the first one on Gifford Court, this antenna will be 371 feet from your house, from your property line. So it's not 20 feet, it's 371.
Right, so right next to where we're proposing it, sir, there's a fence line, and then there's commercial properties. You might be north of that, I would think. Guilford Court might be north of that. But if you were within 20 feet, I don't think, you know,
No, it's
you'd
not
have to
20
listen
feet,
hard.
just a matter of speaking. But what you doing between the lines now where the state property is? Anything or no? Because it's all wood there. You're not interested in doing anything with that, are you? Clean it up or anything? Because it's water that lays there in between the property,
Well,
between the lumber and the other one.
right, just to get an idea, here's the train tracks, right?
Right.
Here's the width of the
Right.
lumber yard. We're on this side. You have commercial properties, and I would imagine Guilford Court is right beyond that, I would think. It's heading more
That
north.
fence that separates the lumber and the state line where the train used to go by.
Yeah, that's on the other side. We're actually on the other
You're
side
more
of that.
close to Morris Avenue.
Correct. Yeah, we're north of the train tracks. Train tracks would be farthest actually from the train tracks where we're located on the parcel, the opposite side of the train tracks, farther away from that. So if you're on the train track side, we'd be even farther away from your house.
This is just a question for the board. I always complain, as a matter of fact, anybody can go there tomorrow and look at the water that lays there, and it's unhealthy. And I call all the time. I call the town, I call the state, and especially in the summer, this has nothing to do with you, it's with them. Especially in the summer, with that water laying there, the mosquito, my tenants, they want to move out because they can't even walk outside. And I keep calling. They come one time, they do a fog or they do a spray, you don't see them no more. So this is a question for all you people on the board, that nobody does anything. I call, they say that's a state line, state property, and they have to go, I can't go against the state. The town's supposed to do that. And it's the same thing where the other property is, that they just built a building there, where the paint company is, on Morris Avenue. You know what I'm talking about, right? Right, all the way in the back, where all the woods are. They they clean up their area, they put a fence there, but behind that fence, where all the woods are, they don't do nothing for it. And the water lays there. You can go there tomorrow and see all the water that lays there. So, you guys should do something about that.
Sir, my only suggestion would be that you should attend maybe a Township Committee meeting and voice your concern.
You know how many times I call the city? The inspector comes there and look. They don't do nothing. They just send the guy to do the fog. They do the fog, it works for that 1 week, but after that 1 week, I'm gonna call the health department. I call the health department, and they give me another phone number to call. This got nothing to do with you. I'm just bringing an issue, the problem that we have in that area. But now they want to build not something else there now.
If I could just speak towards the fact that, about traffic, you're not going to see any increased traffic. It's an unmanned facility. Once it's built, which would take a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, you're not going to see anybody from us. Maybe once a month for 15 minutes. So you're not going to see any increased traffic or trucks driving by as a result. The trucks we use are just a regular SUV,
Well, I hear the lumber
which is a different thing, yeah,
that
certainly.
were digging there, and then they're there a week, 2 days. They're always there doing something. I don't know what, but they're doing.
And-
They make a noise.
I appreciate that, and we won't be doing any digging other than the trenching for the utility lines. That's it. This sits on top of the ground. There'll be no digging in the ground.
That was my concern that I have because of the problem that I have every day. Maybe somebody on the board can take it up and take it from there. Go take a look, see what's there. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you have a question for Mr. McGee?
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Would you come forward and state your name and address?
My name is Daria Onushkanich, and I live in the area 1024 Gifford Court.
In the microphone, please, ma'am.
Oh, wait. My name is Daria Onushkanich, and I live in the area for 2000. And I'm not never against the businesses. I'm sorry for my English, but I try to do my best. And the more business we build in Union, the more higher the property tax goes. That's the question. If we're gonna build more business, I hope it's gonna be steady even for a few years here. Okay, good luck to you. The question is, if this tower is gonna be dangerous to the health for people, because
Well, it's a common question that we receive, and this gentleman right here, Dan Panesso, will speak towards that, so he can answer those questions,
okay.
perhaps.
Okay, thank you.
You could come
Because
back.
it's like really, I see too many top building with all this antenna, and that's why sometime you,
Generally-
okay.
Yeah, all
Generally,
along
ma'am.
Morris Avenue, they're already existing, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, not everybody received letter from my area, I don't know.
They're just obligated to give the notice to the property owners, not the tenants of the buildings.
I spoke with 5 of them today.
Sir, you can't have a communication from the public. I'm explaining the situation. The applicant sends notices to the property owners.
Okay, I spoke with 5 homeowners today.
All they're obligated to do, and they showed proof of it, is that they mailed certified mail to those owners. They may never open it or see it. That's up to
Okay,
them.
of course, they said they never received it.
That could very well be, but
Me
the
and her were the
applicant has
only one that
fulfilled their
received it.
obligation to mail it. A lot of people don't get their certified mail. As to the health issue, that issue is preempted by federal law, so the town can't do anything, this board certainly can't do anything about concerns about health, because these are vetted by the federal government, the telecommunications companies, all of them, AT&T, Verizon, whoever it is, to help what everybody wants is the self-service. You got to do it somehow. This board cannot use that, and I'm sure the witness will address it. The other witness, I think you have one more witness tonight. So we'll hear some testimony on that, but I can tell you as the lawyer for the board that area is preempted by federal law.
And we have guidelines, mandated by the FCC, which we have to work within.
Right, would have to be adhered to. Right, absolutely.
Nobody's here because they haven't received no letters, from what I heard.
Everybody like phones.
Ma'am, you could ask your question after the next witness's testimony. Are there any other members of the public that would like to come forward? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. McGee. Counselor, your next witness.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you for getting us on the board so quickly. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I'm calling Daniel Panesso, radio frequency engineer expert.
Good evening, everyone.
Can I ask you to swear or affirm that the testimony you provide this evening is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
If for the
Fir-
record, you could state and spell your name. and your
First
business
name
affiliation.
Daniel, last name Panesso, P-E-N-E-S-S-O. Address is 916 Route 9W, Selkirk, New York, 12158.
Thank you.
I'll give you my education,
Yes, so
professional
Mr. Panesso,
background.
why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Yes. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Electronic Engineering. I have been a radio frequency engineer for over 25 years. I am here tonight to state the need for the site. I have testified throughout the state of New Jersey and New York hundreds of times in similar applications such as this with regards to implementation of wireless networks.
The board will accept Mr. Panesso's credentials.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Panesso, why don't you describe the nature of the services you provided to AT&T in connection to this project?
Yes, so this site in particular, I'm a radio frequency engineer, and this site, my services were to provide the RF affidavit, which stated why we're here, what the site would cover. I also provided RF exhibits, which depict what the existing network is comprised of, with existing on-air sites, the existing on-air sites neighboring to the site, as well as the proposed location and the coverage that would provide, and a composite of that once this proposed site that we're here before the board, if it were integrated into the network, what that would provide. And I can refer to the exhibits because they're on this desktop, so that if the board would like to see that, I'll open these up.
So let's take it one step at a time.
Oh, okay.
So let's not do those maps just yet.
All right.
By way of background, can you tell me, in the application material submitted to the board, AT&T is described as a public utility for zoning purposes. Can you explain what that means?
Yes, so AT&T is a public utility, meaning that it's licensed by the FCC to provide wireless coverage throughout a specific geographic area that it's licensed to operate in.
And is it licensed in this town?
And it is licensed in Union, yes.
And what's FirstNet?
FirstNet is the first responders network, which is being implemented throughout the whole United States. AT&T was awarded spectrum within the 700 megahertz frequency band to implement a first responders network whereby if there were ever an emergency, it would be dedicated to first responders. Normally what happens is if there's an emergency, a network is overburdened by all the calls that are coming in or all the usage, whether it be data or whatever the reasons are that people would use the phones for. The first responders network, if there were an emergency, is dedicated just to first responders. So that spectrum is allocated to them only, not to the public use. So that's a very important thing if there is ever an emergency. Because, like I said, if a network is overburdened, calls won't go through, you wouldn't be able to communicate. And this is being implemented nationwide, not only here.
Is this temporary facility part of the first
And yes,
network?
this temporary facility is part of it, as well as all of the existing on-air sites that this site is handing off to or working in conjunction with. All sites that are on air are being implemented, as well as new site facilities.
And then I know you're going to show us maps of the coverage, but currently, I want to talk about the existing on-air site at 2401 Morris Ave. Could you just generally describe what that site is and
Yes,
the coverage that it provides?
Yes.
And would the maps help you do that?
Yes, I'll
Okay.
do that with
So
the
let's do
maps,
that now
yes.
then.
So the site that we're currently on is it's a rooftop site. Our antennas are mounted on the roof, and it is providing coverage to the area. Let me see, how do I do this here?
Is that part of the exhibit that we marked A3 that your office
Yes,
submitted,
so
Council?
this
Yes,
is-
and
and I
I'm
can-
trying to see how to work there.
So let
Just
me
so the
just-
board
Here we
knows
go.
and they can follow.
Right, so we're at A3, and this would be these prop maps, as they're called, I
Yes,
believe?
the-
This
These
is
are the
exhibit-
propagation maps.
Exhibit 3 to the affidavit.
Exhibit 3 to the affidavit, correct. And, let's see if I can see. Oh my God, it's hard for me. I'm going to look at the screen because I can't even, with the glasses, I can't see. So what you're looking at right now is a map number 1 labeled on the lower left. This is AT&T's existing on-air coverage. The site, which is labeled NWL 03095, that's the existing rooftop. All the other purple dots that you see on the map are existing on-air sites within AT&T's network. And this is a composite coverage of all of the sites on air working together. The blue represents in-building coverage, and the green represents reliable in-vehicle coverage. So what we're trying to do is this site, NWL 03095, is going to be removed from the network. So we need to replace that site because without that site, we're going to have a coverage gap. So the purpose of us here tonight is to, once that site is removed, we place that coverage. So this yellow star that you see, which is labeled NWL 03908, that's the proposed location of the temporary cell site. And I'll go to another, so just to give you an idea of what we're trying to do, and I'll go to the next exhibit.
The next page of that exhibit.
Yeah, so if you go to the next page, is map number 2, and this is the neighboring coverage that would be provided from the existing on-air sites without the site that's currently on air. So now you can see that the coverage is, we have gaps in coverage where you see the word union. Wherever you see white, it's inadequate coverage for in-vehicle or in-building. So we want to provide, as we stated, we want to have blue coverage. So to provide in-building coverage to the area as best we can, especially to the high school and to the neighboring residences and nearby businesses that are in the area. So I'll go to the next map. Map number 3 depicts the proposed composite coverage. If the site were approved and integrated into AT&T's network, you now can see that the site fulfills the coverage objective to bring the coverage back to what it was when the building, to the coverage that we have on the building currently.
Okay, so that means that this temporary site will close what you've been describing as a gap when the permanent site gets demolished.
Correct. When that's decommissioned, this site will alleviate that decommissioned site.
Okay. We heard about concerns about the health and safety of this new site.
Correct.
I can direct you to its Exhibit B of Exhibit A3, the FCC RF conformity assessment.
Yes.
Okay, can you generally describe what that did you prepare that assessment?
Yes, I prepared the assessment, and what that is it's a calculation of all the frequency bands that AT&T is going to be operating at the site, the maximum power that each frequency band will be utilizing, and this is a calculation of the power from the site and what that level is. The antenna center line height is at 85 feet, and being at 85 feet, what that maximum permissible exposure limit is at a 6.5 foot height at the ground level out around the site. And the maximum for this site is 5.3374%. And we are allowed by the FCC guidelines to go up to 100%. So this site is far, far below the threshold for maximum permissible exposure limits for the general public and the general population. And that is for any age, any sex, or any group of people, 24/7 in operation. The site is well in compliance with the FCC guidelines.
Could AT&T close this gap with a lower tower?
No, this is the minimum height that we need to provide the coverage, the level of coverage that we had. I can go back to Marty's testimony to make it more clear. The buildings that we examined along Morris Avenue, they're too low. And the reason why even though they're similar in height of what we have currently, the current building that we're on now has no line of sight obstructions as we go to the north, because we have the ball field and the school. The buildings on the other side of Morris have the obstructions. There's trees, as well as the building that we're on currently, even though it's being demolished, it's going to be rebuilt. So if we have antennas that are on a building that is at the same height, the antenna, the radio waves would hit an obstruction and they wouldn't be able to propagate out to reach the subscribers that we need to reach. So these types of networks need to have line of sight to be able to reach a subscriber. The antennas cannot be blocked by an obstruction, whether it be a building or trees or other types of clutter. We have to be able to go above that obstruction so that the radio waves can propagate and reach the subscriber.
And in your reference to subscriber, does that include Union High School?
It does include Union High School, yes.
Okay. So is it your opinion that this proposed temporary facility will remedy the potential service gap that would occur in and around the town and allow AT&T to fulfill its FCC mandated coverage objectives and FirstNet obligations?
Yes, it would.
Okay. All right, those are all the questions I have for this witness.
Are there any board members that would like to question the testimony Mr. Panesso has given? Hearing none, are there any members of the public that would like to question the testimony Mr. Panesso has given? Are there any board members that would like to comment on the application?
Can I just ask I want to be clear on, it's labeled throughout as a temporary accommodation. Obviously, the board can't grant a temporary variance, but is there any testimony about what the expectation is for the use of this pole at this site? Is it going to be, once the other site becomes available, again, they're going to return to that? Is that the plan? Just so we can be clear on that aspect, number one. And then number two, is there going to be limitations just to AT&T here? This isn't a co-location issue, and other people are going to be looking to use this antenna as well? I mean, those two areas I think are important in the context of the bulk variances. that we're here for tonight.
So if I could recall Mr. McGee, I think he could best answer those questions.
Yeah, if they're done with the engineer, those were just two things I wanted to be clear on in the
Okay.
resolution. So as long as no one else has any questions of that witness, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can take the second part first. As far as co-locators, no, there will be no co-locators on this pole. It'll just be for AT&T. And the first part, I'm sorry, if you could just repeat that? First
I
part.
think the question was, what's the plan for the temporary
Yeah, it's called
facility?
temporary throughout. I mean, the board legally, as their lawyer, I could advise them, there's no such thing as a temporary variance. We have to hit the criteria to justify the site to be developed the way you're proposing. And I get it, and your proofs went into that regard. I just want to be clear, if there is testimony about what is meant by temporary. Is it 6 months? Once the other site gets built, are you going back there and then this comes down? I mean, we're going to
Sure.
hold you to it, but I
Yeah.
didn't hear any testimony about that.
I could speak towards that. Our intention is to come back with a new application in earnest for a permanent pole at the same location, which of course would be a whole new application. The temporary nature, the reason we're here, and we appreciate you getting us on the agenda so quickly, is because we're in a position where the existing site with the existing coverage is coming down imminently.
Right.
And we don't want to lose our coverage in the area. That's really where the
That's
word
what I
temporary
wasn't
comes
clear
in.
on. So the return will be somewhere, it'd be at this site or that other site if that
It
becomes.
would be at the same property, that's our intention. It'll be in the near future that we would come back with a new application for a permanent site.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is our intention, yes.
Mr. McGee, what's the difference between the temporary site and a permanent site? The monopole would still be up, right?
Sure, no, it's a good question. Temporary is, we're not penetrating the ground. So it's temporary in the sense that we will be coming back to put in a permanent, which would go in the ground.
It would be an anchor cage,
That's
right?
considered permanent, yes. You'd have to dig into the
Anchor
ground.
cage, concrete,
Correct, yes.
Right.
You'd have to bore into the ground. That's really the difference between the temporary and the permanent.
okay,
It's not our intention to keep this here permanently. That's also why it's called temporary.
okay. Well, hearing no comments from the
Thank you.
board members.
Sure.
Are there any, ma'am, would you like to question? You had stepped out for a short period. Would you like to question the testimony that Mr. Panesso has given? You had a question before that we believe he could answer?
I'm just asking about the health. If this would be dangerous for the health.
No, he spoke to that, ma'am, maybe when you left the room. The health aspects are preempted by federal law. They're obligated to fulfill those standards. He's offered testimony that confirms that they are not only are they in compliance with federal standards, they far exceed what federal standards allow. I think that was the testimony, as I heard it, and the witness can expand on that. If you No, I understand. Your
I can say
concerns are
something
legitimate.
quickly.
That's what I'm trying to explain.
I can also add, which would maybe help her to understand, the emissions are non-ionizing. So non-ionizing means that there's not enough power to change an electron in a cell. So this is why there is no evidence, since it's not able to change a cellular structure, remove an electron from a cell, it doesn't cause cancer. And they're very low power. As I stated, this is only 5.3374%, and we can go up to 100. On some cell sites, we have many, many carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, even all of them on one pole. Still, it would be below because it's so high up in the air and away from the public that it cannot affect the public in a harmful way. That's the summation of it. Yes, yes.
They got to come up, Gary, to the podium. They can't ask
Yeah.
questions from the bench.
Would this tower Pietro Lamuscio, would this tower interfere with what we have now? The service that we have now with AT&T or Verizon or?
No. To your question, this is for AT&T only. We don't operate within other carriers' networks, Verizon or T-Mobile. AT&T currently has a site at the building that we mentioned at 24 on Morris Avenue. That building is coming down. So this is why we're here, because we need to keep the same level of coverage that we currently have to the area. So if this site is approved by the board, we're not going to have a disruption in coverage.
So we will not be affected,
You will not be affected by coverage.
the service that we
Yeah.
have now.
Exactly. The site that's on air will be decommissioned, and the new site will be cut into the network seamlessly. You won't have a disruption in coverage if the board approves this application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
The site, as it were, is marked, the site plan that I marked A2, the 15 pages. I know we didn't authenticate that, but we can represent for the record that that is detailing where this structure is proposed and that we're going to find that as part of the record, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because I don't think the public really understood the location of it on the site itself. I think there was some confusion as to that. Your representative explained that. But just so the public knows, there's a whole site plan that goes with the application that's on record that the board has seen and reviewed. The zoning officer is here, he's seen and reviewed it, as well as the township engineer. So they're held to those standards, and I marked it as part of the record about the location of where this temporary structure is going to be going.
Are there any comments from the public on this application? Hearing none. Counselor, would you like to sum up?
Very quickly, AT&T respectfully requests that the ZBA grant the requested setback and separation distance variances and issue minor site plan approval to allow the construction and operation of this important temporary facility to maintain crucial AT&T coverage and public safety benefits of FirstNet in the town while a permanent replacement site can be developed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we're going to conference this. Mr. Bentavegna, would you like to begin?
Mr. Chairman. When this application came across, this board was concerned about the public and the neighboring residents. My concern was three things: noise, health, and safety. Noise was explained by Mr. McGee, no generator being powered by PSE&G underground. Health, Mr. Panesso just said there's no health to the area. And safety, it's fenced in. Those three things were justified. We also have to understand this is a permitted use. With that being said, I think this application is good, and I'll vote yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I agree with my partner over here, and since it's a permitted use, I will also vote yes.
Ms. Martins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After hearing the testimony that was provided today, I did have some concerns prior, but I think all my concerns were answered, and I will be voting yes as well.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleagues, and I'm going to vote yes for this application. I think it's a good application.
Ms. Scott?
Yes, good evening. I thought the applicants did an excellent job explaining the application. It's a necessary application, and I will also be voting yes.
Mr. Graves?
I see this as a strong application with no disruption to the quality of life. I will be voting yes.
As for myself, based on the testimony provided this evening, the property is well suited for the proposed use, which will benefit our community, so I too will vote yes. At this time, can I have a motion to grant the application?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the variances applicable to this application and that council is directed to prepare a resolution consistent with the board's decision.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Ms. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Bentavegna?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Champy?
Yes.
February 21st, a regular meeting night of the board, will have a proposed resolution of approval. I'll send you a draft beforehand.
At this time, can I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, there be no further business coming before the board. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.